Welcome in, everybody. All right, so my name is Brittany. I am the Strategic Initiatives Manager with Disability Insight, and we are hosting this conversation today to talk about how justice is experienced by people with disabilities and how these systems and policies and the community responses have an impact, and what barriers are experienced and how we might, as a community, take action towards creating more equitable experiences overall in areas like law enforcement, in our courts, and in our public safety. So today we are joined by Officer Annie Salinas. She is the tactics instructor. I always want to say tactical, tactics instructor with SAPD Training Academy. She has 20 years of experience with SAPD and degrees in criminal justice and, I don't know what was the other one? Political science, there we go. We're also joined today by Ms. Karen Marple, an attorney in family law. We are joined by Judge William Shaw. Sorry, Cruz, right? Cruz?
Yes.
Judge Shaw is the presiding judge for the 456th District Court, focusing in juvenile court. And our last panelist today is Dana Jones. She is a criminal defense attorney focusing on appeals and wrongful convictions. She's overturned 12 wrongful convictions and is the mom of 2 neurodivergent kiddos, and that fuels her advocacy for better representation for neurodivergent clients. And facilitating for us today is Alicia Perez. She has over 20 years of experience across the justice system, from public defense to prosecution, immigration law, family violence, and is now judge-elect for County Court at Law 13. So she'll be facilitating our conversation today. Throughout this conversation, I want to just make sure that we are all being respectful and honest. We want to speak from personal experience. We want to listen to understand, not to respond, right? And share space with all the different opinions and perspectives and experiences that might be shared in here. Some of these topics may be very personal. We may have conflicting opinions. That is okay, but we need to respect all those opinions. Questions from the audience are highly encouraged. So you can raise a hand, you can get my attention, or if you would prefer, everybody has a index card in front of them. If you would prefer to write your question, and you can pass it off to me, and I will pass it off up here. All right, so without further ado, I will hand this off to our facilitators.
Well,
they gave me the mic, so I get to give my spiels first. There's a wide array of places we could go with this, and you all are here so you can help us decide. I right now practice as a criminal defense attorney. Today I had a mother in court whose son was having a mental health episode, called the police for help to de-escalate. He got arrested. There's family violence misdemeanor charges, and the state won't let them go, even though she doesn't want to participate because they say they can prove it anyways. The job of the state is to see that justice is done. And so I have to try to make the argument now, justice in this situation for someone with mental health issues who's getting treatment doesn't mean prosecution. Prosecution isn't the answer, it depends on what your concept of justice is. And we have to, I think, help expand that. And I think in all of these roles, we're all people with power. And I think maybe my prompt for everyone is to talk about the places that, what we can do with the power that we have in each of our roles: judge, defense attorney, family attorney, law enforcement, and also where the gap is. Because the gap is a place that we can fill as a community. And I've been thinking a lot about alternative responses that we need to mental health situations, to improving, expanding our responses from law enforcement, to even when neighbors are disagreeing and they call code or they call SAPD, and we put a lot of conflict resolution on to people who that's not what they're tasked with, that's not what their mandate is, that's not what they know how to do. So when we think about our power in each of our roles, I think we could each share something that we know that we've been able to push in some place where we see opportunity, or a place we need help, or limits of what we can do. So maybe we could start by sharing their experience with that. Is that smart? Sure. Oh, thank you. What a great panel we have today. Would you like to start?
Yeah, so you brought up a great point about law enforcement being tasked with things that aren't necessarily law enforcement issues. And I think it's important to understand that when we get called out, there are concerns, has the law been broken? And there are a lot of times that the law has, but there are other issues that are contributing to that. So we have to walk a fine line as far as upholding the law, but also trying to respect what's going on here. I've had several instances. I've been at the academy for 10 years now, and part of my job is I teach tactics, but I teach use of force, I teach multiculturalism. I don't teach the courses specifically related to this, but I have 10 years on patrol and 10 years as an instructor. So I take it as an opportunity to guide young officers and what they should be doing, and take the situation as a whole, as opposed to is it illegal or illegal. And there have been a lot of instances where instead of arresting people, we can emergency detain them because they're in a mental health crisis, or there's other issues that are contributing to what's going on. I think we're getting a lot better at that. But when I came on in 2005, the focus was more so criminal, non-criminal, as opposed to dealing with all the other issues that we're now dealing with. There are a lot of tasks put on law enforcement, and I'm not saying that we're burdened by any means. That's not it. But our goal, or our job, has expanded greatly in the past even 5 years. So we have a ways to go. We still have progress to make, but I think that it is a focus for us.
Kind of the same thing here. I'm a family law attorney. I'm board certified in family law. My practice is divorce, custody. I do a lot of mediation for families, and because I have a child on the autism spectrum, this is where I live my life too. And so what I see in my practice is people who weaponize the system, such as CPS calls or reports for abuse or neglect, when it may be something very similar to what you had. I actually had a client call today who had a visit from CPS at her door. Her son had gotten out of control. She called for help, police. He was detained for a couple of hours. Now, Dad's immediate response, they're in the middle of a divorce, is, I'm going to take all of the children away from you, because obviously you can't do what you need to do. But it's funny because Dad hasn't been around. Mom's been taking care of the kids all by herself. She has the child in therapy. She's working through it. But dad's immediate knee-jerk response is, I can obviously do it better than you. And so we see that weaponization of the courts in these cases. We also see the lack of recognition in a case. I do a lot of work as an amicus or amicus attorney in Texas. We call it amicus, amicus, because we're Texans. And what I do, my job is to not represent the child's wants and needs, but my job is to help the judge determine what is the best interest of the child. Very different standard, because the child may say, I want to go live with dad because he's going to give me a pony, or I'm going to live with mom because she's going to give me a car, promise me a car. But that may not be what's in the child's best interest. And I see it really easy with children that they bring us in, and especially I get a lot of cases because I am the autism mom, and everybody at the courthouse knows that I have this in my life, and it's an important part of my world. But you don't see it, and you have the problem when perhaps people are not as identified, perhaps the parents involved are neurodivergent or have issues. And I've seen judges treat people with a lot of disrespect because they did not understand what was going on. And that's a very hard thing, because you don't want to get up there as a petitioner in a divorce case and say, oh, but by the way, I'm bipolar, and but I'm still a good mom. Well, the people here bipolar, and the immediate response is, no, you can't be a good mom. You're off, staying up all night and painting the walls black or whatever, and then crashing for 8 days, which we in the community know that's not exactly true. So the problem there is getting the people who are making the decision, and that includes the lawyers who are advising these people, to understand what is so important and what we need to do to help get the needs of these people across the court, and make sure that the court understands and that everybody understands that it's not the stereotype. I guess that's probably the best way to say it.
Somebody gave me a mic too. That's a good one. Let me try to summarize. Let me try to show my activistic. So Officer Salinas shared that they do have training. They have understood their job as being expanded, but there's room to grow in how they respond. And we do have advocates in the court trying to speak up, but the biases exist that people are afraid to share the whole truth with the court because it'll a prejudice that could be used against them. Okay. Now, Dana, would you like to share from your experience?
Thank you. So I'm Dana Jones. I'm a criminal defense attorney. It's all I've ever done. And long before I was a criminal defense attorney, my mom is a special ed, retired special ed teacher. So I grew up volunteering in her classroom, being around autistic kids, ADHD kids. I knew a lot about it just from being around her. Before I had my kids are 9 and 6, and I'll talk about them in a second, but I had one of my first cases as a young lawyer, and my client was autistic and very ADHD, and he had gotten arrested for a DWI. And reading through the report, I recognized right away a lot of what the officer saw was his diagnosis coming out and not necessarily him being intoxicated. And in fact, his blood alcohol was 0.0 when we finally got the results back. Then they wanted to send his blood off for drugs because he must be on something, and that also came back with nothing. What it really was, he was very tired. His grandpa was on hospice, and so he had been up all night with him, and when he got the call, he had gone to go home and sleep for a little bit, and they got the call that grandpa's not going to make it, so he's rushing back to see him, and he ends up wrecking his car because he misjudged a turn. And when the officer got there, she said, he's fidgety, he seemed nervous, he was very talkative, wasn't making good eye contact, and when she went to place the handcuffs on him because he was making her nervous, he was pulling away, saying, don't touch me, and that went into a resisting arrest situation as well. Long story short, when I had the officer on the stand, I asked the questions, do you know what autism is? And she said, no, I don't know what that is. Do you know what ADHD is? And she also said, no, I've heard of that at least, but I don't know what it is. And what I realized as a young lawyer is that even though I had all of this experience and I could recognize it right away, there's a lot of people in the community that are interacting with, people with disabilities, and they're not able to recognize that right away, not because there's anything wrong with them, it's just their life experience is much different than what my life experience was. So I started kind of, realizing that we had a need for advocacy in the criminal justice system. There's a huge intersection between mental health and the criminal justice system. I think that's roughly around 40 to 50% of the prison population has some sort of diagnosis. So 1 out of 2 people that are in prison have some sort of diagnosis going on. It's a really big intersection. In 2017, I had my daughter, and she, when she was about 4 and a half, she got COVID, and from that, she got something called PANS, which is Pediatric Acute Neuropsychiatric Syndrome, and she now has an autism and ADHD diagnosis as well. My son is 6, he's nonverbal autistic, could not be 2 completely different people, so my experience, even, living in my own house, is that autism is extremely unique, ADHD is extremely unique, and I now use all of my life experience, and being a post-conviction lawyer also, I see a lot of people that have been pled out to something or sentenced for something that really, it could be more of their diagnosis than them actually intentionally committing the crime that they were arrested for or charged with. And if their lawyer can't recognize that, or the officers didn't recognize that, and we have now produced somebody that's in the system that may never have been formed the right intent to even commit that crime, we have a problem. And I try to undo those kinds of cases when they come to me. So that's my whole experience with mixing my career. So now I also go around, and any chance that I can get is I educate other lawyers on very basic stuff, just how do you even recognize if there's something that's going on, how do you even approach that conversation with your client? Because some adults have never been diagnosed at all, and if you recognize the symptoms, maybe we need to have that conversation and get a diagnosis. Or if they do have the diagnosis, I had a woman in my office just the other day, and she's like, yeah, I'm bipolar, but that doesn't affect me whatsoever. And clearly that was having a huge impact on her life and why she's now in my office. So having those tough conversations, and a lot of lawyers, if they don't have that training or background to even recognize it, then they're not going to be able to effectively represent their clients as well.
Wow, that was very cool.
We go way back. So whenever he says this, it's not genuine.
It's always did. So I'm Cruz Shaw. I'm the district court judge for 436. We handle all juvenile criminal cases in Perry County. A little bit of history, just so you know where I'm coming from, is that I'm a street kid from Houston, raised single family. I've done my dirt. I've been in trouble with the law. I was able, the chunk line, strong Hispanic mother, to kind of turn the corner and get where I'm at now. But so I really didn't understand mental health issues, and I didn't understand autism. I thought it was a higher class individual way to get help when us lower class had to struggle. So I thought it was a way just for the privilege to have it's a leg up on us. Okay.
Like claiming a autism diagnosis?
Yes. And at school they got special privileges, not understanding why they get special privileges. Oh, Hector over there got it. I'm autistic too. Just I want to eat special food or whatever.
We could get you evaluated.
I'm sure I got something. Yeah. But so growing up, and I'm working in place facilities, working with probation, working with parole, all juveniles, and then starting trying these cases as a defense attorney, and then stepping into the roles of associate judge, and then as a district court judge, I see a different light now. I see a different light. Every kid that comes before our court is diagnosed with something. Also to take into consideration is that about 98% of the families that come into the juvenile court system qualify for court appointment. That means they are living below poverty. So majority of them do not have insurance. They don't have resources or a system in place to help them out. Oftentimes too, this is the first time that they can get services for their kids. Juvenile side is more, I won't say it's rehabilitating, that's what it means. It's in the best interest of this child. So it's not always computed, even though it can be. We're trying to get these kids help, get the families help. So this is the first time a lot of these families can get a psychological help or if it is to receive them so they can understand what's going on with the child. Now, majority of the kids that we see are Black and brown. And we still have that old mindset that there's nothing wrong with me. Okay, I'm not giving medication, and there's nothing wrong with it. You're just bad. Oftentimes, that's not always the case. These kids really have issues that need to be addressed through counseling, therapy, or it needs to come with medication. So it's not only the kid accepting it, but the family and the parents accepting it, and working together as a community to accept it. Oftentimes, too, like I said before, a lot of these families are below poverty, which means that they don't have resources. So when that child's acting up, the first person they call, okay, that's not always need to be the first person. So right now we're advocating for different mechanisms to be put in place, networks where you can call the church or community. You know, Alex is having an episode. I'm going to call, my neighbor. He or she comes over, helps to de-escalate. Let's de-escalate, let's not call the cops. So for example, this week, I had a, thank you, I appreciate it. So, and I have a whole bunch. I'm gonna get one. Kid comes in and he's clearly having an episode. He's holding a knife and he's looking at his guardian, like, I'll kill you. And the guardian's like, well, then kill me then, kill me then. So he's antagonizing this kid. The kid's like 13. And the mom, who lost custody of the child, is still living in the home. So she's holding the kid back, trying to calm him down, while the guardian doesn't know that he's really making this thing worse. So after it dies down, they call the cops. The cops come, they arrest the kid, and now he's charged with aggravated assault with deadly weapon. Okay, which is a serious offense on the felony side, which he can go to prison. But after we're all just seeing this, we're like, there's something going on with this kid. Let's get him evaluated, let's get him some help. Meanwhile, guardian, I say guardian because he never adopted this child. So he only has legal CPS guardianship. It's like, no, I want this kid to go to prison. So now we have not only worrying about, this kid's not going to be successful on probation. Because that guardian is going to do whatever he can to make sure that this kid violates his conditions, which he's trying to get help. We're trying to help him. But this individual doesn't want this kid to get help. He wants him incarcerated. Okay? So that's just the mentality that we live with in our communities. We're, for whatever reason it is, we're not moving together as a community to really give these kids the help. Prison will do this kid no good. No good. He'll come out worse. Yeah, he'll come out worse. And, CPS, so they're underpaid. I mean, they're stressed out. They're busting. And misused. Yes, and misused. So we can call CPS and get this kid out of the home, but he needs a stable environment. CPS is going to move him around. We're going to put him in hotels, even though I don't do that as much anymore. There's no placement. So, growing up from where I came from to where I see now, I understand better the resources that we need to have available, more specifically for youth. If we can get these kids diagnosed, get them therapy, counseling, or whatever, or give a better understanding in our communities what this means, hopefully we can reduce the juvenile situation that we see.
So Dana's sharing about how her understanding of the situation creates a way to defend and explain and create an alternative to conviction, a path forward, and that the gap there being the education of other people so they can recognize that and see that too. And Cruz explains how getting in the juvenile justice system actually can provide a lot of the services that the kids who got there because they didn't have those services. But there's more to be done and a gap to be filled still. I sat outside court today, and this woman, she liked my curly hair. She had curly hair too. We started talking, and she left home at age 12. I don't know how she survived. She's got an attorney we all know who's gotten her off of 20 different charges. And I'm like, girl. She's like, yeah, I'm getting tired. I was like, have you been evaluated for ADHD? Because she described being up at night and spiraling and anxiety and outbursts. And I'm like, you know, it's just something that happens very much in our field. So there's a gap between access to resources and understanding of the people around us that stops us from a result that will move us all forward. And I guess the point that I want to make to the general public, you're in legal services, I don't know where everybody's from, but having judges and attorneys and law enforcement all very strong, great at their jobs, many years of experience, we're also limited, and there's a role for the community to fill that we can't fill, but we can join together and fill it with you. And that's, if I say nothing else tonight, that's what I would want to call, like, we all have to stand up and be brave and figure out how to bridge these gaps, whether it's how we respond to mental health calls, how it's respond to neighbors fighting with each other, just to make sure we fill that gap. Because most of these criminal issues and family issues aren't, this person's really bad, this person's really doing bad stuff. It's characterization, being taken advantage of in the moment, misunderstanding. Having a little bit of our backgrounds, does anybody have questions that are jumping out that you want to ask?
Don't be shy.
Well, I am in the legal profession, so. Are there any means whereby the Bar Association could do more to get this information out, help train, especially the court-appointed attorneys who aren't familiar with meeting with clients with disabilities, or any way to raise awareness and have that looked at first versus all.
I was a president of the family law section of the San Antonio Bar Association for several years, and I put on a CLE. I'm now the vice president of the Family Law Bar Association of San Antonio, which is a separate organization. But we do this. It's education. The big thing. Lawyers need and want to learn. We're required to have classes. And the resources and facilities available through the San Antonio Bar are fabulous. The people we're talking to here are with the San Antonio Legal Services Association. It's a fabulous group. I've volunteered with them for over 20 years. And what they do is they help provide legal services to the poor. There is so little available through the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. There's so little available from Catholic Charities. There's so little available. It's not a criminal case. There are not resources out there. In the civil side where I practice, the only time you get a court-appointed lawyer is if you're staring at jail because you didn't pay your child support or you didn't allow access to your kids. Contempt of court is the only place. And so there isn't a place for those people who need the help or want to do the help. So these people are filling the gap. I want to recognize that, but I think that it always comes back to education. When you guys bring people in who are willing to talk about this and share this kind of information, everybody walks out of the CLE that I do going, I didn't know about that. So that's what I would charge y'all to do, if you can do that, through the great organization we have at the San Antonio Bar Association. Let's use that to get this word in. And I'm getting the word out about y'all, so.
So I, in the criminal defense legal community, I'm vice president of the San Antonio Criminal Defense Lawyers Association right now. I speak pretty regularly on the topic of neurodivergent and how we can represent them. I co-directed a CLE a couple weeks ago and brought in an autistic ADHD attorney who's a fabulous trial lawyer to give her understanding of herself and how we can all be better lawyers. It was genius what she had to say. I've also connected with another autism mom. She's a prosecutor up in Bell or Belton. I can't remember which county. Belton, I guess it's Bell County. And she goes around to the entire state, anybody that will listen, law enforcement agencies, I can connect you guys with her. But her and her autistic son give their presentation about their experience as a prosecutor and, you know, an autism mom and his experience being autistic and in the, you know, I don't know, I haven't seen their presentation just yet. I've just talked to her a lot about it and I'm hoping to see it. But to answer your question about whether the state bar is doing it, I don't personally know of anything directly from the state bar at the top level. But I do know that communities, in the legal community, we are taking the initiative and starting to do it a lot more. We just need to do it a lot more. And my experience too, whenever I give my presentation is, that blew me away, I had no idea, from a lot of lawyers. This is a lot of times their very first time, and no fault of their own, again, it's just their life experience. It's their first time learning what autism or ADHD or another kind of disability even looks like. So I think it's important that we keep putting on these presentations. Lawyers will show up, they always do for those kinds of
I also think more importantly is that we need to mandate judges to be educated on these issues as well. Statutorily, we have to take domestic violence courses as part of our judicial CLEs. There's no reason why we shouldn't be mandated to take mental health or autism or something like that required. So just give us an idea of what in my situation with kids that come before us, what they're dealing with on the adult side with the adult. So that can be statutorily required. We have it for domestic violence, and we also have it for DWIs.
Well, I was looking at, I always use my AI to figure out what judge candidates can and can't do. And that's one thing you can help draft legislation. We can draft that. That could be your legacy. And then you can start the nonprofit.
And one of the things we see, I think what we're hearing a lot about here is more the hidden disability. Someone in a wheelchair, someone who's blind, someone who's deaf, those are easy for the police to perhaps look at and see if there's something that they can address that disability as part of their examination or interrogation. Interesting. But when you have somebody who masks their ADHD because that's what they've learned to do their whole life, or they take their meds and their meds have run out, and it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and they've had a couple of drinks, and they know maybe that's not such a good thing, but no. Those we ADHD people tend to be a little impulsive, just a little bit. So, but we see this so much in this, and again, the autism, the ADHD, that people don't know it until you see it. And you see it acting out, and then you still don't know, because then you think, who's that guy at the restaurant who's being such a jerk over there? Well, you don't know what his story is. And we end up getting into the, you know, that may be the guy who gets mad at the waitress because she didn't bring out the chocolate milk and put it right here. She brought out the white milk and she put it over here. And when you're with your child, we can go, hey, we got this. It's over here, honey. We'll get this fixed. You know, I mean, I have an adult child. He doesn't melt down very often, but when he does, it ain't pretty. So, but, you know, those kind of things will escalate without anybody even realizing. And that's then the police get called into the restaurant because this person's making a disturbance. Or the guy trying to get off the plane I saw yesterday on the news, who was upset because they'd been stuck on the plane for 3 hours. And they would not let him off the plane, and he's over there trying to open the door. I mean, there's a line. There's some people who are just going to do things like that, and then there's people who are doing it because there's a reason, and we don't know what it is. So that's something we need to be aware of.
I kind of wanted to bring up, because y'all spoke up really, so this, sorry, I don't know if it's cutting in and out, but,
Keep it closer. It's like probably you have to speak straight in. Okay, better? Yeah. Oh, too much. That's
okay. So, with the things that we're discussing, I think it's kind of important to understand that the requirements that we have for training. So, our department is historically, we go above and beyond as far as the training goes. So, BPOC requires 736 hours for each officer. We're talking about cadets. Every single officer that's been through, when I came through the academy was 6 months long. Now it's almost 8 or 8.5. So it's gotten a little longer. But we have 736 hours that BPOC tells us what we have to teach. And BPOC is basic police officers course from TCOLA, and I'm getting into all the acronyms. Our department teaches over 1,400. However, they're gonna be based on priority. And unfortunately, no officer in this department wants to arrest a child. Nobody wants to put them in the legal system because we understand that once that happens, their life is gonna be impacted. We understand that. But with the example that you gave, Judge, you have someone that's pushing for that young man to be arrested. And technically, what he did was criminal. So if we don't arrest that young man, we're gonna get complained on. And I'm not saying it's about job preservation, but we have someone that's like, this kid committed a crime. He needs to go to jail. I want him to go to prison. And on the back end, we're like, this kid doesn't need this, but if I don't do this, I'm gonna be investigated. And it's a harsh reality, unfortunately. We accept that as part of our job. We know that there's gonna be investigations and we're gonna have to answer for what we do. However, to go back to those BPOC requirements, there are 10 hours that are dedicated to juvenile offenders. Our department teaches 12, but out of 1,400, it's very small. There's 4 hours that are dedicated for deaf and hearing impaired. However, we do have a community immersions program that's voluntary with the cadets, and one of the places that they go out to is a youth organization for deaf and hearing impaired children. So they get some insight into how to identify that. And we kind of talked about how that might be easier for us to identify. The problem that I can see is that in the middle of a violent event, if I'm dealing with someone that's deaf and I'm giving them commands and they're not hearing me, that could come across, and I think that's one of the questions, is it could come across as non-compliance. And it's difficult because if it's a life or death situation, do we have the time to figure that out? We teach de-escalation. We teach 40 hours of crisis intervention training, which covers a lot of psychiatric illnesses as well as disabilities. We teach 16 hours of de-escalation. There's a bunch of different classes that we teach, but I don't think we specifically address, not to a good extent, how to deal with those situations in the middle of it. We do teach an hour of autism awareness. That's not required by the state, but it's an hour.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to kind of balance those priorities because we would love to give more time to everything.
Yeah.
But now we're getting to a phase where we need more officers on the streets, so they're actually condensing the academy.
Well, we are looking for a new police chief, right? So we could look for somebody and push for somebody with these qualifications, right? We don't have a new one selected, do we?
Not
After,
yet, no.
oh, yeah. See,
And
we
Chief
could put that on
McKenzie-
our agenda.
He is great, but he's got to balance everything.
Yeah.
Like, he's got a tough job, and I don't envy him a bit, but
You can have a lot of well-meaning people who have some experience, but that doesn't alleviate the issue.
absolutely.
And one thing we want to do at the courthouse, I say we because I just assume everybody's going to agree with me, is make ADA access more accessible. Have signs that explain what it is and how to get it and who to ask, and here's a form, here's where you complain. We don't have those things at the courthouse. When I talked to Sapoa about these issues, I got a mixed response of the weight of, like, we're supposed to be responding to all this stuff that we're not actually in charge of and can't fix. And then when I was like, you know, there are groups that provide medicine to people who need it, which helps. They're like, well, you can't pass that out like candy. And I'm like, well, it's not candy when you need it. Yeah, so.
And it kind of speaks to the amount of our constituents that we're dealing with regularly that are suffering or have a disability, not necessarily suffering with it. So that might be where it's like we can't pass it out like candy because a lot of the people that we deal with over and over again might have some sort of disability.
On the over and over again is there is a mental health section in the county that their job is to help when somebody is a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or will deteriorate without further intervention. I worked there for 2 summers when I was in college, many, many years ago. But what we saw was what you said, the repeat offenders, the people who just kept coming back through the system. And I'm sitting there at my desk at my typewriter, that's how long ago it was, putting the paperwork in for a guy who'd had 16 prior commitments to the state hospital. And because of the lack of resources, his family would call, they'd get a mental health warrant, the constable would come and pick him up, or the sheriff would come pick him up, bring him to our office, send him over to the jail, Dr. Sparks, who handled all of the mental health diagnoses, and they'd send him to the state hospital. And in 30 days, once his medication had kicked in, and he was back on the Haldol, he'd go home. And guess what? 3 weeks later, they're calling again. Why are they calling? Because he's gone off of his medicine, because there's nothing else to support this man. And so that is a system that is still in place. They still, because of the lack of the resources at the state level and this county level, to provide those services, to keep them for more than 30 days, or to give them the aftercare that they need, so that they're maintaining their medication and things like that. Those people will continue to be people you see and you bring down and you go, wait a second, this, you can tell sometimes. You can see that there's an issue with this person, and you can ask the family and say, yeah, well, he went off his meds about 3 weeks ago, and this is where we are. So those kind of issues hit us all the time, and we have to be careful about that.
So, I'm standing in front of the speaker. I just received an invitation to participate as a stakeholder to provide feedback that will help create the executive profile used to recruit and select the next police chief. What is one thing that you...
That email right after I said it out loud.
No, I got the email 2 days ago.
Send it out.
So I got it 2 days ago, but what is one thing that you would want me to, as a representative of the disability community, to take forward into that process?
I'll start with this. So I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. I think you guys have probably heard the story. And growing up in Eugene, if you've never been there, it's a smaller college town, but there's a program that's through a clinic that if you call in for a mental health crisis, the clinic you get social workers with an officer that comes along. And it works, I thought that's how all police officers and agencies work, because that's how I grew up. I think that Bear County has it, I think SAPD, Bear County has a SMART program with BCSO. SAPD has one too. Four. I hope our next chief of police, because I think that there's things that we can do. One, officers don't want to be making bad arrests or just detaining people if they don't have to do it either. And if we have at the upfront, when the initial call goes out and we're getting them the right services, then we're going to avoid a lot of fees and time and everything else of taking them to the jail to get magistrated or to have to go into the court system. But if they can just get the services and right up front, then that's going to be a whole lot better. My mom lives in a smaller community in Florida now, and she just sent me something the other day, and I think this is a great idea. They have a program that you can sign up if there's somebody with a disability in your house, and they give you a free sticker that you can put on your window at your house, and your address will also be registered. So if a 911 call comes in from that address, it's kind of flagged for the officers already that this is what they're going to be dealing with when they get to this particular location. I think that would be a really low-cost way of kind of notifying officers already of what's going on, that they can maybe approach the situation a little bit different. So to answer the question, it's just an officer that maybe is a little bit more open-minded, and I'm not saying that Chief McManus isn't, but I think that there's newer and improved ways that we can go about keeping our community safe, our disability, neighbors safe, by some simple changes that we do in an already effective system.
And the San Antonio Fire Department provides those stickers for windows right now. And so you're registered with San Antonio Fire Department. I don't know if the police has access to that, but they do have that program here in town. So that would be a great addition. Again, awareness. Here we are, all of us in this system, and we know these things, but we don't know everything that's out there.
But is the fire department communicating with that?
That we don't know that. That would be the next question, and that's
I've
something.
never heard of it.
That might be something that we can put in the call details, so when that call does come in, if it does flag that address, it can pop up in the detail, but I think probably the easiest part would be the person calling it in, especially if they're aware, like, give us that information. We're not clinicians, but we do have a basic understanding of how to deal with stuff like that.
It's a lot. So,
One or two things.
so I was on city council for a little bit too. So when I was on city council, I chaired public safety. So I worked along with the chief, I think he was a great chief. It's a lot of responsibility. And I would say for that, the next chief to do
So you're like, no notes?
Do what?
No notes?
No
You've
notes.
got no notes?
No, no. There has to be a collective team around our chief with different expertise and need to have someone on his team or her team that understands the system. What does that look like? I don't know. But having a very well-diverse surrounding experts who are willing to explain the situation to the answer so they understand what's going on. Because I know when a cop gets a call, they're not thinking about disabilities, they're not thinking about autism, they're not thinking about any of that stuff, they're thinking about public safety. Is anybody in danger? Yes, I'm there, and I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that to minimize the damage. That's their first instinct. I understand. It's not to the back end when we get it. Like, you know what? This could be handled differently. But they always call it the Monday morning quarterback. They would have done things a little bit differently. Yeah, we can do things. But it takes more than just the chief. It takes the court system, it takes attorneys, it takes our nonprofits. And what I do is schools. Schools is a huge situation that we need to address mental health issues and autism. So there's so many different parties that need to come into place, come to the table, and be able to assist each other in dealing with this issue.
Yeah, it's almost like we need a working group and then somebody from no, because like we just getting together, this is the second time we got together, we're still learning stuff from each other.
Yeah, but you really love these working groups.
But just an information sharing. So we know, we didn't know about the fire department, and now we know that 911,
Start
yeah,
a
combined.
text me.
That stuff makes me so anxious, and I should have known I had autism before, but I learned it at the Bear County Courthouse because that place is intense. And what I wanted to achieve, I also appreciate Chief No Notes, but having a designated person to focus on these issues, because poverty or mental health issues are probably the cause of most of the calls. And so, if there's somebody who always has to call that out, how are we addressing it? How can we do? What resources could we ask for? Like a liaison. I don't know. You probably already have a liaison, but somebody who has high value on community liaison on these specific issues to keep informing each other.
I think one of the things in the disability community and the mental health community is that there's not a lot of cross-pollination. People know that there are organizations out there, and you watch people all of a sudden, well, this is my issue with my child, I'm going to start a foundation on this, and I'm going to start my fundraisers on this. And there's so many things out there that are fractured, that if we could come together, and we could, there are resources. United Way has a helpline, 211. You can call them, and there's somebody there who, if you say, I need to find a resource for my autistic child who also has cerebral palsy, and we've got some physical issues on top of that, we're looking for therapy, they can start giving you directions on things like that. But so many little pockets of people are out there working in their individual little silos. And I would hope that the next police chief would look towards those silos, or have some people, like find somebody who's a liaison, who then can tap into those so that that community can tap into those services.
I think that for the department to take that on, just doing it at a department perspective, it's going to be difficult for us to provide those resources. But I think it'd be great to have a community organization that we work hand in hand with that can disseminate that information. Absolutely. And I want to be clear, I love Chief, and it's been a great long. But I am happy for him to retire and go enjoy his life. Hopeful that the next chief will be just as invested in the community as he's been, because he does really care.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you'll have safe officers.
Yes.
And so your safe officers do their communities, they go to every association meetings. They will tell an officer, my child is autistic, my child has a disability, so they know. So when that call's made, the safe officer can always be that liaison in our neighborhoods, say, hey, we go over to 802 Nottingham. I know Hector has mental health issues. He's a good kid. He doesn't need any problems. Just be aware, So I think y'all have a form of that right now.
But even that, like my biggest case, which will probably be my last case, is the safe officer knew this guy. He knows he's a good guy. He just knows that things are off. So he let a lot of things slide for a long time. until it built up so much. And in between his care for him and the guy's issues, that's when we should have been able to support the work of the police, which something is truly isn't their job. The neighbors would be like, he needs help, but I'm gonna just call code and I'm gonna call SAPD. So in legal services, they don't need a lawyer, but like social service, like the equivalent of social service, I'm calling for help because there's this problem I can't fix. And they can come in. So the safe officer isn't in charge of understanding, but he's stopped between, he also can't get that guy the help he needs. So, right.
Yeah, that's awareness. A lot of neighborhoods don't realize they have a safe officer, or they don't know who to call if you're not a member of a neighborhood association. Or, we have a great safe officer in our neighborhood, and my neighborhood organization works very hard with them. And when my son was younger and he was walking home from high school, I posted, I think maybe Nextdoor or Facebook, I said, hey, just so you know, this is who he is. He wears yellow all the time. He's going to talk to himself and sing to himself. Because we let him walk home from high school and from middle school. The first time he walked home from middle school, I had 3 people from the elementary school, teachers say, did you know Carter's out there? He's on the street. I'm like, yeah. He's safe. He's fine. They're all, okay. You have the awareness, and I think so much of it becomes an awareness thing. If you're over here just barely making ends meet, trying to feed your 3 kids, and you don't have this, you've got this one that's giving you such a hard time, you may not know that there's a safe officer in your neighborhood because all you're busy doing is trying to put food on the table and keep the lights on.
And one suggestion that I have, just for some of the parents out there, our kids have 504 and IEP plans when they're in elementary school through high school and, whenever they're done with the public school education. You can have kind of a home contingency plan that's kind of like that before you're going to call and get law enforcement involved. Maybe talk to your neighbors if that's going to be the situation, or how are you going to de-escalate this situation? Get those things mentally prepared in place beforehand with the adults in your house and in your community, and that way, when that falls through, then maybe you call police at that point in time. But really taking a proactive, and I get it, my daughter has broken, when she was 5 years old, broke 70-inch flat screen TVs. She would go into blackout rages, and that's her PANS, but also her diagnosis as well. I usually have bruises up and down my body because of her violence. She's in a much better place now. She's not as violent. But I get how overwhelming and stressful all of that is. So when you mentally prepare for something, you can help yourself and your situation a little bit more. So we're not putting the burden solely on law enforcement officers if that's going to be a last resort. So I really advocate for that for parents to have that ready to go as well.
And a chief who just explains, here's what we can address and here's what we need the community to step in. Here's our issues we're facing with crime. Here's what we can do, here's what we need people to step up for. Like, that's relationship and accountability that maybe people who are political might feel too guarded to speak out about, but it could be helpful to put the call out. Do we have more audience questions? You said for us talking so long, and all of us can talk about it.
I'll try to make it short, but I'm Michelle, by the way. I'm a parent of a child that has disabilities, autism. He's 15 years old, and I work a lot with Melanie and Brittany. I work at the University Incarnate Word, but I'm also a PhD student. I'm a mother-turned researcher. I'm trying to understand the experiences I was having navigating healthcare, education system for over 15 years, and now I'm working with parents, and we're doing story sharing, and we're trying to see how stories can be impactful through training and education purposes. We're sharing these stories with health professional students, so I'm seeing training need for future doctors and therapists and nurses. I even share my story in our teacher ed program for people that are becoming future educators and teachers in the school system. And then I'm seeing a need now here of educating, which I learned so much from y'all right now about how it's really important. There's a gap there as well. I just want to learn community do? What could someone like me do to kind of fill that role or help support more training that's needed for our communities? Talked about awareness, like, and I know there's a lot of parent training that's needed as well, because there's not a lot out there. I know some nonprofits that are starting to do behavior training for children, and I do know that early intervention was really, really important, getting kids really early on. We would hope like it happens where a teacher identifies some type of behavior in a school and is referring it out, or a parent identifies it early on to catch them before they go into adulthood, the legal system, that pipeline that I guess I'm seeing. And so any feedback on that?
I'm just laughing because my dad was a psychiatrist, and I asked him when I was 16. I heard ADHD on the news. I was like, do I have that? And he put me on a computer test. And I was like, no, it doesn't really show that. And then fast forward 20 years, and I was trying to quit law, and I was in a master's of counseling program, and the homework assignment was like, how do you diagnose it? Is it a computer test, or is it a full interview? And talking about everything that's going on in your life, and your grades, and how you do at school, and it's not the computer test. So even professionals can miss it. And I did, for lack of a diagnosis, get involved in the legal system. Just fortunately, it was on the law side, not the in the trouble side. But my first thought is, when I get to be judge, I'd bring all the judges together. You guys come tell your most pertinent stories. Because there's nothing more impactful and more lights up people's brains and help them learn more than a real story about it. That's my idea of how it could help.
And again, another plug, but for this organization that put this on today, Disability SA. I've been involved with them since 2018. My son was on the Fiesta Especial Court twice. We're really proud. He was king in 2021. He helped raise $20,000 for this organization and the things they do. But my experience working with them and the passion that they have for helping anybody, awareness being the first thing, knowledge and education and awareness, and putting out those feelers to other organizations and bringing them into the tent so that we can all work together. And the schools have provided so much because they don't have a choice. But the schools are also so limited. Most people, if we've got an ADHD diagnosis, are going to get it in the public schools. And I've also all heard tales that private schools don't take kids with behavior problems because they don't have to. So the public schools are where those kids are going to be. And the public schools do everything they can, but they're also limited by money provided by the federal government, by the school district, by the tax base, where they are. And we all know that, there's certain districts in this town, you'll get really good services, and there's certain parts of this town where you will not have the same services. But we need to be finding a way to marshal these services together. I think that's one of the things the MAC Center does, is really working hard to do, is to help give us the one-stop shop. The MAC Center at Morgan's Wonderland, Multi-Assistance Center. If a family goes there and they say they've got a child with an issue, they will help you find something. We talked about that earlier. But those are the kind of things where we all need to be looking at how can we make sure that we're not operating in the cycle. Make sure that we're getting that out. One of the things in family law is we're supposed to have everybody go through a 4-hour parenting class. It was really big 15, 20 years ago. Now none of the judges get asked if you've taken it. So you don't see them in a parenting class unless there's something really bad that's happened. And then it becomes, where do we go for behavior, anger management? Where do we go for, dealing with family violence and things? And nobody addresses the mental health issue that is underneath so many of these. And it's something that we need to figure out, that there is education out there. You got to know where to find it is the hard part. And then you can take the class and maybe you learn. And out of the clients I've had through the years, most everybody comes out and says, yeah, I learned something from it. There's a few who just sat at their computer and went click, click, click. But most of them got something and they didn't expect to get anything. I'm a huge proponent of education and awareness. And the more we can do things like this, where people are hearing and learning, the better we can spread this, and then you can take it to somebody else, and you can take it to somebody else. And then they get that information, and that ripple effect through the pond that is San Antonio will help us all.
I know we're here just talking about the criminal justice system today, but I think that an important thing to remember is that disability is through every system of our community. It's not just the criminal justice. So as many times as you can get your, what the work that you're doing and get the story out to different kinds of communities as well, is really, really important as well.
There's also there's people who don't have resources and are stressed and immigration issues that they don't have diagnosis or treatment for their kids. But then there's also the educated people who are like the elites and run our city who feel like they are liberal and on top of the game and progressive or whatever, and they're not recognizing the things and the people around them. I mean, the worst interview I ever went to was for a diversity, equity, inclusion program, and I was like, something is wrong with me, because the way this was set up made me feel like a 12-year-old. I think that we need to not discount the fact that education has to take place at all of the levels in each of these areas. Just because people think they're on the up and up doesn't mean they have any clue. Then I wrote I was like, am I going to complain to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office about how I felt discriminated against? I was literally at the end of the interview, I was like, that last lady seemed nice. You should probably just go with her. Like, I'm good. I'm out. How much longer do we have?
We have about 17 minutes.
Okay. So your group might be a resource. You and your storytellers might be a resource we could reach out to inform our groups in the future.
It would be really cool. This is just me. We all like parties. Not doing a working group, that's for damn sure.
Meetings.
No.
Lots of meetings.
No meetings, no working group. I bet you, if you had a little block and get together, get margaritas, everybody get together, have a good time. But have an expert come out, have a conversation. I'm willing to bet 90 to 99% of people have somebody that they know has either autism or some type of disability. They just don't talk about it. But when you get people in a room, they're comfortable, they're neighbors, they're friends, and they have these conversations, and then just bring an expert and have a conversation about what's going on. Maybe bring out an attorney or somebody who knows about the legal system and how it works with kids or adults. Just getting folks to talk about it. That may spark a bigger conversation, either in their workplace or at their schools, but just getting people to have that conversation. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that could be something like when you're a city council member, if we had come up to you, we're like, hey, would you like this in your district? Could we go around? Yeah, we can go to those guys. Kids. There's a ton of stuff on here. We're doing so well.
One thing that I do, it just bothers me.
Take the mic.
It just bothers me. So, we're talking about PD arresting for, in my field, kids with autism or mental health issues, or disabilities. But sometimes they're the victims too. Okay, and I think we don't forget that. They can be victims for various reasons. We see a lot of bullying because of autism, and then when they fight back, they're arrested for assault. Okay, the days that we were in school, we were able to fight, and okay, break it up, or put what we did, put the gloves on, go in the back, fight, shake hands, and done. Those days are gone, and so now they're arresting kids in our schools.
Maybe you bring those days back.
I would love to bring those days back. I know that's not PC, I'm sorry, or on Facebook or whatever, but sometimes you have to get out there and hit, but whatever.
Face the issues. It's time to face the issues.
Right.
That's what you mean.
Whatever you say. Right. But oftentimes these kids they're victims, and they have no response but to be violent and physical. But we have to also have to understand that there are victims of bullying or other, negative behavior from their peers, and they're just acting out. So it takes the schools to understand that. It takes the DA's office to understand that, and more importantly, it takes the judge to understand that. Take a step back and say, you know what? I see it. I can't tell you the number of times where kids come and, like for example, kid speaks, but you can tell that something's wrong with his hearing. This is the way he speaks. He's not hearing properly. And so the kids are picking on him. So his response, hit you with a chair. Hey, he hit him with a chair. But I understand because you went to your teachers, you went to your family, you went to all these people telling them they're bullying. Nobody did. So your only last resort was to act out and be violent. Now, is that the right? Probably not. I mean, he's a kid. What do you expect? We have to learn, we have to teach proper behaviors and time. We have to realize that some of these kids that we deal with are actually victims as well.
Just to kind of go into the weeds of this a little bit, because I find it all very fascinating. Beyond just the arrest or whatever is going to happen, and they get into the system, there's actually a very different response physically that goes on in the brain of a neurodivergent kid that, and just to give you a quick example, when they're under a stress response, autistic individuals, their cortisol levels take longer to elevate, and then they stay high for a lot longer. So where we might perceive some sort of stressful event and we respond very quickly to it, and then our cortisol levels go back down, an autistic individual may not respond to that in the same way. I had a friend that tried a murder case where the defendant was autistic, and he was defending his sister who was getting beat up by her boyfriend. So it's a valid defense, but he kind of went too far. The situation had been done, and he continued to strike the individuals where he died. So they charged him with murder, just thinking it was overkill, and she was able to present the actual response that is physically going on in his body was that he was elevated for so long, so he stayed in that fight or flight for a much longer period of time. So the education part doesn't just go to, the superficial level. There is a much deeper understanding that actually goes into a lot of the cases that we see and that we defend, and how that is going, the outcome of how that's going to happen in the case. So what justice may look like in one case for a neurotypical person, it's going to not look the same. And we as a legal community need to understand that another situation, an autistic young man kissed a girl on the cheek and she was offended by it. Is that an unwanted touching? Yes. But he didn't understand the social cues of how that was not appropriate to do that. So justice for him is not going to be put him on probation because he's out there assaulting girls. It's going to be maybe some level of education that he's going to need. And as a legal community and as a law, not just the legal community, the law enforcement community, the criminal justice community, from top to bottom, we all need to understand that. And we're not going to be able to not interact with people with disabilities. That's just not a reality at all. We're going, as a community, we're going to have to interact with people with disabilities. And our system right now is designed for neurotypical people. And it's not designed, and it's difficult to navigate for neurotypical people to understand the legal community, or the legal system as it is. But we have to start making more accommodations for people with disabilities.
When my son was diagnosed in 2003, the rate of autism diagnosis was 1 in 150 children. It's now 1 in 36. What is the difference? Some of it's better diagnosis, clearly. It's more availability of services and resources. Professor Palmer from the University of Texas Health Science Center said, what I heard him speak, said that genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And so what he was seeing in his studies were places where there were high lead levels in the air and in the water and in the soil. We're seeing higher concentrations of people with autism in areas like even out far west county, like Brewster County out in far west Texas, had very few people and had extraordinarily higher levels of autism in the population. So those are kind of things that we don't even know, but the difference is now, it's not just when I was in school, the weird kid that everybody knew was weird and we didn't talk to. And at that time, those kids who were really severe, they were institutionalized and nobody saw them. Well, now they are us. Maybe me, maybe all of us who have these issues out there. And we say neurodivergent, and that's a fabulous word, but we don't address that neurodivergent is just a part of who we are. It's just a part of everybody else. Like you have green eyes, or you're left-handed versus being right-handed. It's just where it is, and we need to, I guess, that acceptance level of how do we address that it's here. We're going to treat it, And we need to figure out a way to treat it effectively because it's a part of all.
Maybe we need a neurodivergent chief of police. Yeah. Because I mean, when your focus is justice, it's really hard to work. That would be excellent, excellent law enforcement. I'll get the working group together. You'll be right on the top of the list.
Working group with margaritas, and apparently we'll be there.
I will call it the block party.
Working groups are now block parties.
But there will be no group text message because I will be out. I'm done. I'm anxiety crazy. I can't see the room.
Yes. Okay, so
as a mom that is disabled and has a kid who is disabled, I don't want to cry,
It's okay. I cry every day as an autism mom.
but it's hard to take care of myself every single day, every single morning. It's a struggle. And having to take care of a child and be responsible for him and be there and yes, and go to every appointment and have everything together. I can't even do it for myself. So for me, it's a struggle constantly to show up, do things, get everything together, get organized. I have a situation where dad is not around. Dad has a legal issue. I am disabled. I don't have the resources. So now he's trying to reach, and I don't know what to do. I'm scared because I don't want my son to go over there because his safety matters everything to me. That's why I'm in Texas. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. And I can't go home just because he put me in a predicament of safety, which over there is my community where I have my people that could support me, that could help me. I'm here alone, dealing with my own situation. Now I'm having my son. So for me, trying to reach to Rio Grande legal, I just want orientation. I just want to know what I can or what I can't do, or how could I fight, or how, like the ways, because I've been trying to search, see, speak, and it seems like I can't pass that wall. Like I'm scared at some point, but I feel like I have no way out, and what I've done is no contact. You stay over here. I'm gonna keep my child safe. So, and then at this point, I'm punishing myself because I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Am I really doing, or am I violating his rights? Or like, so I'm stuck and constantly beating myself. Like, what's the right way? I want to do it the right way, and I don't want to jeopardize or punish him because of what my decisions are. So that's really why I'm here, because I want to know.
What I'm hearing you say is that you don't have additional resources outside of you and your son to help with these things, and the fear about seeing, about dad having access to your child is the fear. Okay. Do you have a court order?
I don't have it.
Okay.
I haven't done anything because I don't want to put my son in a way that he could see.
Yeah.
Or
Let me talk to you after this, but this is a very common dilemma that you're in, and it's a very hard place to be because the Texas court systems presume that we start with that both parents are equally qualified to parent. And that's the presumption until we can show that it isn't. And so he has rights and duties. It depends whether he's on the birth certificate or not, or whether, there's a court order that delineates rights and duties. And so those are kind of the items. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
It just brings up that point that there's a lot of disability that's inherited, and at the end of the day, most people are just trying to get through, survive. And in my professional world, I get a lot of congratulations, but in my personal life, I'm also bringing myself and my 4 children and my husband through all of our things that we carry. And sometimes just making sure people who are struggling have the first place to call, the first thing to find access at. Like the MAC, Sacred is a good place, from one thing I went to. Just maybe finding one person you can ask who can give you one more reference, but she is a good person to talk to after that.
I just add from like the law enforcement perspective, if your son's father calls and says, we will not take your son from you to give him to his father. That's a civil matter. We don't get involved in civil matters, so we're not going to take sides. Without a custody order, we're not getting involved in that. But even with a custody order, and I can speak from experience because I had a 4-year custody battle for my son. But we're not. Your son is with you. We're not going to take him from you and give him to dad. So if you need, I think a lot of times, especially in today's day, you're anxious and you're scared to call us for help. And I think a lot of people are scared to call us, especially right now, because they think that we're going to look at citizenship or deportation. That's not our job. We're not going to get involved in that. So if you need anything, feel free to call.
I want to thank all of you for getting together. Melody, or Brittany, do you have any? Brittany?
Real quick, I do have one last question that I would like everybody up here to answer for us, is that what is one action, big or small, that we as a community can take in the next 6 to 12 months that you think would really increase equity in these areas?
In my world, you're in charge.
I'm not in charge. Do more listening than less judging. And that's kind of, no pun intended. But do more listening. When we listen to understand instead of listening to respond, I think we have a true understanding of what people are actually dealing with. And we're not so quick to judgment. Therefore, we set aside our own personal values, our own personal thoughts and ideas, and listen to the person. I think we do more of that when we have more understanding of our neighbors and our better communities.
I think it was mentioned by somebody else, but I think somehow getting all of the different groups who advocate for their individual issues kind of together on the same page and maybe being one voice instead of 100 little voices being one big voice. Margarita group, block party, so that we can have a voice with, law enforcement or the legal community or city council, commissioners court, etc.
I think that don't feel like you have to be an expert to go tell your neighborhood organization or the PTO at your school or whatever church you go to, whatever group that you have access to. Be like, I'm going to tell you everything I know about this issue and resources, and just share that, and it is enough of a starter. Like, nobody's going to be an expert on anything, but not to be afraid to share and take that out. And we did start an advocacy group. That's how I met Chief like 10 years ago, but for immigration issues, there were so many groups, and this is something I wanted to talk to you about too on our list of conversations, but having a margarita block party committee
Y'all trying to get me somewhere.
where a representative from all these groups can come and we can set ideas for policy, and, oh yeah, we were talking about this. Yeah, and I wanted to tell her that we agree on what are our top issues that we want to take. So when you go to that committee for chief, you don't just have your input, you've got the whole group is like, here's all our stuff. And then they can't shoo anybody away. But yeah, so take local action, not being an expert, just share what you know, it's gonna help somebody. It's gonna make somebody feel better or not alone and give them some resources. And yeah, then we'll do the big margarita committee party.
Volunteer. Find it. It's hard to find time. We all run crazy. We all have a lot going on. But to those we're given much is expected. And everybody in this room and everybody I think watching, really we have been given them. We feel even if we weren't, we feel like we've got a burden on us. We've got all these things we've got to worry about. But when you work in a population that's different than yourself, you learn so much that expands your world and your horizons.
Really add anything to that? Nailed it. You guys did great. You did good.
And I'm going to add, share your story. So share your personal experiences. Disability SA has a leadership and service ambassador program that it's an extensive thing that you fill out. You give us a lot of information, but when we're out doing community advancement work and advancing the attitudes of our community towards people with disabilities, we look at those applications or those registrations and find people who have personal experiences and the lived experience to be able to share in those spaces where we're out there doing work. So share your story.
All right.
Okay, well, can we give our wonderful panel a round of applause? Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your schedules to come talk with all of us. A big shout out to Alicia for facilitating, and we also want to thank all of you who attended, anybody who will be watching this afterwards, and a big thanks to Salsa for coming and sharing resources with all of us today too. So thank you all so much. And so we have a little bit of time left so we can continue conversations, check out Salsa at their table. We have resources from us here. So yeah, continuing to talk to each other. We do have some tables around with a little bit of kind of prompt conversations if you want to check those out. But also you can continue the conversation outside of this room. We have our Mighty. It is our community network platform, and we have a channel on there for continuing conversations that happen here and anything in the community. So you can scan the QR code on the little tag there and join that. Yes, you'll look for Conversation360. And that's, in addition to that space, you can also see our calendar of events, news that we're posting, and then we have different groups of what I call neighborhoods for our different programs. And so you can find whatever space works for you in there too. Thank you all.